Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hello and welcome, my friends, to the Life You Crave podcast. I am here today with Tiffany Yelverton, who is, well, first of all, let me just tell you how I got this woman on my show, and then I'm going to tell you who she is. I was somebody that you all might remember, Dr. Gail. She was on the podcast a couple of months ago, and Tiffany was a part of one of those emails, and I noticed Tiffany's title in her signature on her email. Tiffany's title on her email stated, and I'm reading this, Intimacy and Sexual Wellness Advisor. And so, of course, I replied to her and said, first of all, let me say you have the coolest job title ever. And then later, as we chatted, I was like, I have to get this woman on my show. So let me tell you who Tiffany is. She is the founder and chief sexionista of Entice Me Soirees, Incorporated. Tiffany is a master at disarming sexual shame and normalizing conversations around sex and pleasure. She entices individuals and couples to connect with themselves at their sexual core, stepping into their innate power to feel sexier in and out of the bedroom. She is the creator of Sexy Survivors, which is a digital platform dedicated to inspiring survivors to love themselves and experience pleasure after cancer treatment. She is a pioneer in body-safe sexual pleasure products, and her company, Entice Me, offers a carefully curated line of non-toxic haute toys, accoutrements, and programs to entice life. So, of course, personally, some of you may know this, some of my listeners may know this, but I'm a former human sexuality teacher, and I am really blunt and open about sex. And I highly, strongly believe that women, especially as we age, midlife and beyond, we are not having enough orgasms. I believe this very strongly. So when I met Tiffany, I was like, I've got to have her on the show. If I could have Tiffany on the show today and just get a quarter of you to having, more body confidence and better sex, I would feel like this is a total win. So I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I really believe that if everybody had more orgasms, we could have world peace. So
yes, I love that. That's so true, right? So, okay, first of all, tell us a little bit about how did you become Tiffany, the sexpert? I don't even know if sexpert's quite the right word, but how did you get into the work that you're doing?
Well, it's been a long journey, and I realized really early in life I was very sexually minded, and I was always fascinated by sex and relationships. And once I started having sex in my late teen years, I was kind of a late bloomer, but I was always very sexually minded. I realized that as women, we were never taught about pleasure. We were only taught about the consequences that come with sex. Mm-hmm. And then we get into a relationship and we're expected to want sex and have a lot of sex, but we don't know really about our bodies. We don't know how our bodies work. We probably haven't explored a whole lot. And we have all of this shame that's in our subconscious about what society has told us about our bodies and about what sex means and how we should act and behave as women. And so I took myself through a journey of discovering my body after I got out of a narcissistic relationship and taught myself how to enjoy pleasure, how to enjoy my body, and how to have an orgasm. And when I had that, I was like, everybody needs to do this.
Yes.
Every woman needs to be taught this and know that it's empowering. And I know that men know that, then, that sex is power. And when we own our own sexuality, we can really change the power balance in the world.
Wow. Yes. Oh, wow. So let me just back up for a second. You Was there a like a gap for you in terms of, you had said that, you started to become sexually active in your late teen years, and then you said you started to really explore your own body, and was there a gap for you in terms of having sex and having orgasms?
Yes, I didn't have an orgasm in my relationship at all. And I thought that something was wrong with me. I thought that I just wanted more sex and that I was craving more sex. But what I was really craving was better sex.
Yeah. Woo, I got the chills when you said that. I love that. So I know you're a big advocate for pleasure at all stages of life. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I think we're taught that we should enjoy sex when we're younger, but as we age, oh, it can go away or it's not as important in our lives, or, everything else takes a precedent over our own pleasure. And we put that sometimes on the back burner, especially I see it in women who have been in 20, 30, 40-year marriages, and they are just like, oh, that's not even on the table anymore. I don't care if I ever have sex again. In fact, I think the statistics is that women who have been married 20 years or more, 50% of them don't care if they ever have sex again.
What is that? What is that about? What do you mean they don't care?
They don't want it. They just have let themselves think that it's about something else, or that it's a bargaining chip, or
And so what happens? Do women, in the 20, 30 years of marriage, do they lose their desire?
I don't know if they lose their desire. I think that resentments build up in a lot of relationships, and people don't talk about it. And then we have an epidemic of sexless marriages in our country, and then it perpetuates. Children see that and think that that's normal, and then they do that in their own relationships as well. And we've been taught that sex is, well, I grew up in Idaho, so we were taught, not in my family, but in everyone else's families, that sex is for reproduction, and that it isn't about pleasure for women, and that it's just your duty. I hear women tell me that all the time. Like, oh, my mom told me it was just my marriage duty.
Mm.
And
okay, I feel like this has to link back to orgasms, because like I could see how somebody would feel like it's their marital duty if that was the messaging that they got from, society and family, but then also B, if there was no orgasm happening, then it would feel like a duty.
Right. And I think that that's what it is that they're not having great sex. And so they can just say, oh, well, this was, so why should I even do it? But once you've had great sex, you're like, I want to do this all the time. Yeah. I was actually talking to a potential client last night, and he's like, I was fed this fallacy that women want sex. They acted like they wanted sex as much as me, but now I'm listening to all these podcasts and they don't. And I'm like, no, wait, some women do.
Yeah.
Want sex all the time. I'm one of them.
Right.
A lot of women I'm now working with have gone through that gray divorce and are experiencing their sexuality for the first time in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, sometimes even 70s.
Yeah.
And having their first orgasms and wondering why.
First orgasms. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Wondering why what they missed out on all these years. I had a client last year that was so angry that at 45, when she took my course, she had her first orgasm. And she was so angry that no one had ever taught her about that before.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that. So why do we not talk about it? Or, I mean, I know we have this puritanical society here, and, I get that part, but I mean, is there some obligation to teach women about orgasms? Because I don't hear men saying nobody ever taught me about the orgasm piece, right? Or do they say it and I just don't know about it?
Well, I think that's like men's is external ejaculation comes with an orgasm for most men. And
Yeah.
so it's taught in sex ed, it's taught in health class, but in even medical journals and medical books like Grey's Anatomy, the clitoris isn't there. There's no reference of female pleasure organs. Most sex ed classes, even in the United States and the few states that mandate it, you can't mention the word pleasure or clitoris in class,
I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
right?
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm imagining that there are listeners right now who are listening to you and they're like, yeah, I'm 45 and I actually have never had an orgasm. Or I think even, I'm guessing even more women, and I'm guessing this because I have clients right now currently and friends even who are like, I have zero desire for sex, who maybe they did have desire in their 20s and maybe teens and 30s, but something shifted. And I know for a lot of women it can be motherhood, and I would love for us to, if you want to touch on that whole the virgin or the whore kind of thing, but I would love for you to speak a little bit to the women who are like, A, I've never had an orgasm, so what do I do? And B, women who are like, I don't have the desire for sex anymore because I've been married for 30 years and I hate my husband or whatever it is.
That's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah, I know.
So let's start with the I don't have any desire
Yeah.
because of motherhood.
Yeah.
So motherhood, it is that Madonna whore complex of like, oh, now I'm taking care of a child, all of this, but also a lot of you're just depleted after you have someone touching you all the time as a when you have a child on you, that you really do have your quota of oxytocin, which is the cuddle chemical that is released when you nurse. It's bonding, it's by touch, and it's released at orgasm as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may have all of that quota, but your partner may not. And then, all the things that they didn't tell you were going to happen to your vulva area and your lady bits when you have a baby. And then just the shame in that, like, oh, I didn't know, I don't look the same, I don't feel the same. Yeah. And then it just kind of gets pushed to the back burner. And then it's another day, or a month or a year. And you realize you haven't had sex for a few years. Yeah. And once you stop having sex, you aren't getting those other hormones that are released at orgasm, like testosterone, which helps to boost your desire and your arousal and your libido. Yeah. And so like when you stop having sex, you don't have those hormones as much. And so you're going to not want sex as much.
Right. Oh, so it's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing.
Yes. I actually just did a show about that, but on Second Act TV. And so it was all about if you don't use it, you lose it. There's a really great, one of my favorite articles that I quote all the time was in Good Housekeeping. And it was about a woman who was a mom and she had decided to have sex for every day for a year. And how that changed the way she looked at her body, how it changed the way that she felt about her husband. And she says, sex begets more sex. And it's so true. And I really call sex life's lubricant, because when you're not having sex, all those little irritants and agitations build up and there's nothing to smooth them over. But when you're having sex, all those feelings come back out, that it's good and you're connected and can be fun.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm a woman listening and I'm like, I haven't had sex in 2 years, and assuming she has an opportunity, maybe she's married or has a partner or whatever, what should she do?
Well, sex begins with you. So you don't have to have a partner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Body. And, if you want, one of the easiest ways to just start feeling sexual again is to tap into your senses and to slow down. You know, we touch ourselves all the time. We put our makeup on, we do our hair, we get dressed, we shower, but we forget to feel and we go through the motions, but just slow down. And when you're in the shower, smell what the body washes smell like, what the water feels like on your body. Look at yourself, touch yourself, slow down and feel all of your senses and explore those. And then when you get out, instead of slapping on everything, just, you know, slow down and rub your body lotion in and feel your skin. What temperature is it? What's the texture? Where's the scar? Where did that come from? And you're going to start to feel your body differently.
Okay. So seeing as my listenership and the women that I work with, a lot of the women that I work with hate their bodies. Right. And I remember I didn't necessarily hate my body, but when I was feeling like I didn't have a great relationship with food and weight, I was a big overeater. I kind of felt out of control and powerless with food. I hated rubbing lotion into my body because I had to feel, you know, the parts of me that my brain was busy hating and judging. Do you have any tips for women who are experiencing that? They're like, they want to get it over with as quickly as possible.
So it actually, when you slow down and you touch and you feel, you are going to be activating oxytocin in your body, which is going to create self-love. And so you do it anyway. And I used to hate my body. I used to never wear shorts. I hated my legs. I thought I was fat when I weighed 125 pounds.
Yep.
And now I weigh 100 pounds more than that. And I love my body.
Yes. Yes.
Because and this is about self-pleasure, when we self-pleasure, that all those juicy, loved up chemicals are created. But instead of like oxytocin creating an emotional bond with your partner, it creates self-love. And it's been proven to help you overcome body image issues, to overcome shame, and to create confidence that comes from you.
Yes. Wow. That's reason in and of itself, right? To like go slow down with the body lotion and just feel that. Okay. So one of the things that that I know you're really passionate about, you talk about the gender pleasure gap. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that's the difference between the amount when in a sexual encounter, how much men orgasm versus how much women orgasm. And it's quite a disparity. You know, most women, well, I think it's like 79% of women don't orgasm from intercourse alone. They need clitoral stimulation. But in their last encounter, it's like 40 to 50% difference between how many men orgasm versus women. And, you know, I always thought sex ended when he had an orgasm.
Right.
But it doesn't. And that's where we kind of just give up, or we say, oh, you know, it's over. I'm done. He's been trying so hard.
Feel sorry for him.
Yeah. I feel sorry he's working so hard and I haven't had an orgasm yet. No, it's, you know, take your power. You deserve it too. And give yourself one before you even start, if that is necessary. And so, because once you have one, it's easier to have another.
Yeah.
But that also is, not only is there an orgasm gap, there's a pleasure, you know, that whole pleasure thing. And it's actually, I believe, ties into the money that we make, because men self-pleasure about 20 to 30% more than women in studies. And if you look at what the gender wage gap is, that 20 plus cents per dollar, it's that self-confidence that allows us to do things, ask for what we want in the bedroom and in the boardroom, asking for raises, feeling confident, going on camera, speaking from the stage, asking for a raise, negotiating a salary, all those things that come naturally for men. Most of them will say, oh yeah, I masturbate before I go on stage. It releases my nervous system. I'm not stressed. I feel calm.
Right.
It's that boost of confidence. It's that boost of chemicals that actually block pain receptors so you can do things that you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think you're absolutely right. I was thinking about that. I was wondering that when you were talking, that there is this sense of women being reluctant, hesitant, avoidant of asking for what they want, or even just not asking, but just getting what they want, right? Like I can claim this, right? Just like you said, like, so maybe it's about pleasuring yourself before you have sex, if it takes a while, for you to orgasm with your partner. So that idea of like, I'm entitled to an orgasm, I think, I think for men, they don't even think about it, but for women, there isn't that sense of entitlement. It's like, well, if it happens, great. But if not, then when he's done, it's over, kind of thing. What? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I hear a lot of other sex educators and experts sometimes say, oh, well, it's about the journey. It's about the experience. Yes, it is all about that. But also, if you told men it was just about that and that they weren't going to have an orgasm, they wouldn't be having sex either.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm tired of hearing that. Like, I want an orgasm.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get one. If he gets one, I get one, or if she gets one, you get one too. Like, it's not a if, or it can be an if and, an and.
Right.
It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right. Yes, totally. So one of the things that when I was teaching human sexuality, I taught in high schools, and we talked about porn and the problem with porn, not any kind of moral problem with porn. I'm a fan of porn, but the problem with the representation of how women actually experience pleasure when it's porn that is made for male viewers, right? And so I would explicitly state, because understanding your anatomy, the female reproductive system, and actually understanding the clitoris, and it's not just the little part that, you can see on the outside. It's this whole thing on the inside. So when you understand that, and then you're watching pornography and you see this woman who's like in some crazy contorted position, who's apparently having the biggest orgasm of her life, but you can see that her clitoris isn't being stimulated. And that doesn't mean that, I know some women can have an internal orgasm, all the things. But the point is that one of the messages that I wanted to get to my boys was always, this is not usually how women have orgasms. And so, so I want you to know that, because I want you to make sure that you are paying attention to your partner and how this anatomy works and how it can actually enhance the experience for both of you. So what would you say the role has been in your work of pornography and that kind of representation of female pleasure in pornography when it is created for a male viewer?
I think that we don't see female pleasure a lot in traditional pornography. Yeah. We see that she's faking some noises, and that's not how you really sound having an orgasm anyway.
Right.
And usually in most porn that I've watched anyway, before she even has an orgasm, he pulls out and ejaculates on her face. So it's not about her pleasure at all.
Right.
It's not about mutual pleasure. It's about a photo shot and, his pleasure and his orgasm. It's not about her orgasm or her pleasure, because what you see in porn is not what women want in bed.
Totally not.
We don't want jackhammer. We don't want, someone to give us a facial. We don't want all these things that are shown in porn. That's not what's attractive to most women. Right. And if it is your jam, great, but that's not.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I love that you have a specific focus, like a specific part of your work that focuses on women who have survived breast cancer or reproductive and genital cancers. And you say that these women are especially deficient in body confidence and at risk of failed relationships. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So when a woman goes through breast or genital cancers, it is really what society views as our femininity usually. And then there's a lot of shame with losing that or having it altered with surgery. Also, with chemotherapy, you're put through a medical menopause. So you've got all of that, or you're on hormone blockers. So you are losing a big part of your desire and being a woman of what society says. And so teaching women to really love themselves and love their bodies, but also women who have gone through cancer treatment, especially breast and genital cancers, are twice as likely to be divorced during treatment than their male counterparts going through like prostate cancer.
Really? And that's because,
well, men don't know how to deal with things. They don't want to deal with it. I have had clients that their husbands refuse to even acknowledge that they have cancer or, that they're what they're going through. And so, it's really horrible.
Yeah. So you have, you have a part of your work is with sexy survivors. And I would love to hear a little bit about that cause and how can people support this cause?
So Sexy Survivors is a platform we've developed to support female cancer survivors, and we'll go into male cancers in the future. We're working to get it picked up by cancer treatment centers and hospitals so that it's part of the comprehensive treatment plan for all survivors so that they have support. Because 4 out of 5 women who go through breast cancer treatment have severe sexual dysfunction. And 95 or 99% of young cancer survivors that have gone through treatment are really concerned about their sexual futures.
Really? Now, does that include even if somebody is a survivor but hasn't necessarily had any kind of, for example, I have a friend who she just what's the word? She was diagnosed with breast cancer, but she's now come out the other side. And she did not have to have a mastectomy. She found out when she was just in stage 1. So would somebody like her still fall into that category? Or does it have to do with the actual like alteration of your body due to the cancer?
No, it can. And that's where the fallacy is. One of my friends also, she had stage 1, had a lumpectomy.
Yeah.
It came out fine. And about a year later, she was like, oh, I didn't really grieve that this was a process. There's sometimes a lot of guilt that it wasn't as bad as someone else's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then not being able to take hormones or being on hormone blockers do affect a lot of, it's like going through menopause another time. And she was very angry that no one told her that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be a double mastectomy to go experience some trauma.
Right.
It's that, even radiation, I have several women who were in my first case study that had anal cancer, and the radiation did so much damage to their vaginal canal that they can't even have penetrative sex any longer. And no one said that was going to be affected. And they were, I'm very happy to be alive, but I wish that this would have been addressed. And how do I deal with it? And they were just kind of ignored by their doctors and said, oh, just deal with it. Or, I don't know what you can do. Use a dilator, use some lube. And there's a lot more options than that.
Yeah. So
And
you,
normalizing that sex doesn't have to be penetrative sex, that
yes.
there are other options and that
Yeah.
there's other ways to experience pleasure and to have orgasms and to enjoy what you do have and to
Yeah.
realize that your body tells your story of your life and that you can still love it. You can still have pleasure. And we're going to teach you how to do that
Yeah.
and
One of,
communicate those needs to a partner, a future partner when you're dating, how to go through those steps as well
yeah.
so that you can live a full life.
Yeah, I'm imagining you're talking about how your body really tells the story of your life. And what that made me think about was, we know that social media and women's magazines in particular, they are a serious assault to women's mental health and self-esteem. And I'm thinking about how for so many of us, as we see our bodies age, right? So there might be women out there who are struggling with food and weight stuff, but there's also women who are struggling with, I know for me, after I had my baby, like my boobs went south. Like, where did my boobs go? Right. And so, what do you think about this representation that we really see in the media? We know in the media that, actors in particular, female actors, once they age out, right? They become, there's this great, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you Google it. But there's this great sketch with, um, oh my gosh, Amy Schumer and oh my gosh, all of these great names, Amy Schumer, and I can't think of her name right now. Tina Tina Fey. Anyway, it's hilarious, and it's about the day that they became unfuckable in Hollywood due to age, right? And it's hilarious. You have to watch it. It's really quick. It's SNL thing, but the thing is that part of it is real. It's like once we're so youth obsessed, and so once I'm no longer 27, I am no longer desirable. I'm no so and then I think you couple that with like this idea that an aging body, a 50-year-old body, a 60-year-old body, a 70, 80-year-old body is no longer sexual. And I know it's coupled with the whole, virgin or the whore thing and the motherhood thing. I mean, it all kind of was like this snowball effect. But the reason I'm thinking about this is because you say your body tells the story of your life. And I'm thinking about how women look at their bodies and they no longer see themselves as sexual because of what's represented in the media. We don't see 55-year-old women having these like great sex scenes in movies. I mean, very rarely, right? And we don't. And I will just add to that, I really love French films and foreign films. And you do see that. And in French culture in particular, but also in Spain and Italy, you do there is a total cultural understanding that we are sexual throughout all of our stages and ages, from very, very young to very, very old. But here in the US, we are like, oh, no, no, no. Like once you're married, like you're done, right? There's no more sex and you're no longer sexual. What are your thoughts about that influence of the media in that way?
I think it's awful. I think it's a disservice to women. I think that all of the filters and photoshopping and depiction of women in even sex scenes, it's a disservice to women because we think that that's what's normal.
Yes.
And I know that that's like Cosmo is what was a lot of my own body image issues. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't look like that.
Yeah.
And it's all the articles were about pleasing someone else, not
Yeah.
about myself.
Yeah.
And Bridgerton is a great example of that. Like it's like her first sex experience and he touches her, kisses her, and she has an orgasm. That is not what happens. Like, great if it does, but very rare.
Right.
Women, that's how your body can react. But
Yeah.
it is a lot of women think that that's how sex should be. And then when it's not, they're like, oh, well, something's wrong. I'm just not going to do this anymore because I'm not getting that.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. So I'm sure that there are so many listeners out there who are like feeling motivated, right? They're like, okay, I think I really want to explore. I didn't realize that I could be more sexual, that I could have more sex, that I could have more orgasms or better orgasms or whatever the thing is. You've given us some great tips on how to really slow down, like you said, and really kind of tap into your senses. What else would you love for listeners to just know or take away from our discussion today?
We've talked a lot about aging and sex and cancer survivors, and that and with going through perimenopause and menopause, a lot of women say sex is painful, and that they don't want to do that anymore because of that. But there are a lot of options and solutions. But also know that pleasure isn't the absence of pain, that pleasure is even more than just getting through it, that it's not painful, that it can be mind-blowing pleasure for you. And I teach women how to do that. I teach you how that every time you have sex, it can be like Bridgerton, that it can be like you're touched and have an orgasm. I know, because I used to not have orgasms at all. And now that is how my body reacts.
Yeah. Okay. I have to stop you there. Of course, you can't give away all of your secrets on the podcast, but how do you teach women how to do that? Like, what does that even look like? Like, if somebody was curious about working with you, like, what would that even look like?
So I teach a class called the Orgasm Experience. It's a 12-week course that builds on the activities every week. You have play work that you do, but it's about the mind, body, and the vulva. It's not just you need to drink a glass of wine and get out of your head. It's that, your arousal for women begins in the brain. And so working on those mental things, the psychological experiences, the subconscious thoughts that you have that you don't even know that you're having, and then the biological hormone side, the physical side of what's your pelvic floor muscles like? How are they? Are they tight? Are they slack? And the positions that you're in. And it begins with loving your body. And one of the first activities is standing in front of a mirror and just looking at your body and looking at yourself and thanking your body and appreciating every part. And we start that way with all of our cancer survivors too, is that this is who you are. This is your body, and it's there to support you, even though it may have, betrayed you during treatment, or because you have cancer, a lot of women feel like their bodies betrayed them. Yeah. And so learning to love yourself that way, and with touch and pleasure and some of those activities that I've shared with the sensate touch of just rubbing your skin. Yeah. If you can just give yourself a hug a couple times a day, it's really life-changing.
Do you ever run into women who are in your program, but they are so resistant to the idea of loving their body that they just can't get around it?
Yes. And I work with other modalities. I teach EFT, emotional freedom technique of tapping, of how to, clear those even generational shame out of the body. Yeah. And I teach the women in the course how to create their own script so that they can tap and clear those things out. And we do visualization and meditation and things like that. So it's all different kinds of things. It's not different just approaches. Self-pleasure.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned in my work with women is not for all clients, but there is like a subgroup of my clients who it's too big of a leap to go from how they currently feel to loving their bodies. And I have a whole workshop on radical self-love, and it's just too big of a leap, right? So we sometimes have to just land somewhere in the middle around neutrality, right? Moving away from self-loathing and to neutrality is going to get us so much further than just hanging out in self-loathing, right? So yeah. What else? Anything else? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was just going to share a story about something like that. I had a survivor who was in her 70s, and she had an ostomy bag, which is not attractive, right? That's what shameful to a lot of women and not her normal body. And something that we did was she wasn't ever going to love that, right? No one's going to love having that. Just pretty much a fact. You can embrace it.
Sure.
But we just draped a scarf around her waist and her abdomen and tied it in the back. And she had sex with her husband for the first time in 2 years.
Wow.
Because she didn't feel, and then we, wear a robe that's open. A lot of my survivors, if they've had breast augmentation or surgeries or mastectomies, just wear an open robe that covers what you don't love. And there's still plenty of skin to skin contact.
Yeah.
So there's lots of options that you may not have thought about. And that's what we bring out and share and get you to accept yourself.
Yeah.
And eventually learn to embrace it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. This is such important work that you're doing. And it's not talked about enough, right? I mean, one of the things that I'm so grateful for with social media, actually, it's like it's got its good points and its bad points. But one of the things that I'm so grateful for is that menopause, for example, is something that women used to go through completely uninformed and isolated and on their own and actually totally confused about what's happening. And now, because of social media, women are speaking up and understanding each other. And like all of these books are now being written because everyone's like, oh, women are actually, wanting to know about this menopause thing. And research is now being done. And that was really this shift in the menopause, kind of the surfacing of the experience of menopause is due in large part to social media. But I feel like what you're talking about with sexual pleasure and desire and starting with yourself and starting in your head and all of that, I still feel like that's not talked about enough. Like this is still what you're talking about is still very subversive. It's under the surface. It's maybe I was just thinking about this because one of my closest friends, I realized we have never once talked about our sex lives. And I'm one of those people that I'm kind of an open book, I taught human sexuality. I talk about all the things. Like my husband falls apart when I'm explaining anything to my son about sex because I'm very explicit, but I use medically accurate terms. And right, my husband's like, oh my God, anal sex. Like I'm gonna explain what that is. And yes, I know that he's 9, but he asked, right? So if he's old enough to ask, he's old enough to hear the answer. So I'm an open book, but I've realized what you're talking about, it's not, it hasn't surfaced yet. Or has it? Am I just missing the boat?
Well, my feed's filled with stuff, but we get shadow banned so often that we can't really talk about it. We can't use anatomical terms on Instagram or our videos don't go out to people. So it's really a double-edged sword of we want to talk about it, but you can't because it's still regulated so much. So that's why you don't hear a whole lot about it because it's banned and
there's still that association with, well, it's banned and there's a lot of
maybe not banned, but it's so curated that and regulated that, that it's bad because there's such a disconnect with what pleasure versus sex trafficking or porn or, I get banned
abuse
all the time and stuff shut down because of what I do, even though I'm on the medical side. It's not porn, but I'm grouped into the same industry with that.
Oh. Well, anything else that you would love for listeners to take away from our chat today?
We're going to share the link for the 6 sexy secrets to more body confidence and get on my newsletter list. Reach out to me. I offer your listeners a complimentary session with me to explore what we can do and have all the pleasure that you deserve in your life. It's important and it's empowering and you deserve it.
Yeah. So you do work virtually with people. So it doesn't matter where people are located. They can reach out to you. I will definitely include links to connect with Tiffany in the show notes, as well as her amazing free gift that I can't wait to get my hands on. But this has been so fun and so powerful and important. And Tiffany, are you available to speak with other groups? Like if somebody's like, oh my gosh, I need to get this woman. Do you do any speaking
Oh,
or?
absolutely. I love to speak and be on other shows and podcasts, but I love public speaking. I love advocating for what I do. I love advocating for survivors. And if people are interested in supporting sexy survivors, we haven't launched our official crowdfunding yet, but they can go to enticeme.com/sexy survivors and they can donate. We need volunteers. We need help. We need
Good.
all kinds of stuff. So,
Okay. That is so good to know. You're doing such great and important work, and I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for coming
thank
on the
you.
show.
Thanks.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.